yeah. But
By the way, you
they,
guys make me laugh because as I was setting up the microphones, I'm like, I wonder how.
Oh, what, we're here early, we're going, we liked our old seats.
but yeah, if he's super cool. Him and his wife Sally are awesome people. And they're not up all the time, but they're up in
Yeah.
the summer mostly. But they have an awesome little river access spot behind their house as
Oh,
they butt up
really?
to the Battengill. You go like over the
wanted
Yeah.
help, so
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah, I don't know, but he's such an independent dude already that
Yeah.
you know.
I guess it's the least of his worries. If something happens.
I think at a certain point you stop thinking about it, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
Hey, it's 6 o'clock.
we
Let's
do
get
it.
this show on.
Let's go, I know. I hope we weren't on mic last time talking about how it should only be an hour long.
Everybody ready?
I think so.
We're ready.
As a reminder, GNAT is live streaming and they're also recording, so make sure you speak close enough to the microphone, because it's difficult to, for anybody who's listening to the stream to be able to actually make out voices if you're too far back. Good evening. Good evening. How's everyone tonight? Good. Checking to make sure the microphone's on. Yes, you can hear my voice coming through speakers? No? No, you know why? It's because I turned on their mics and not mine. So we're going to try that again. Hey, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Manchester Community Library and the second round of the Meet the Candidates Forum. We have, this is the second of our two events, right? We had the second and final round, right? This is, again, the second and final round of our Meet the Candidates Forum. Last time was about a week and a half ago. I had a bunch of people who submitted questions, and then we had people in the audience who were able to ask questions at the end. We have had a similar situation this time, fewer questions, although I think the people who were submitting questions this time were maybe trying to drill down a little bit deeper on some of the things that they had asked the first time around. So I'd like to take a first couple moments here and just say thank you to the candidates for making times in their schedules in order to be able to be here. And thank you to our partner GNAT, who is currently live streaming this event and making it accessible for people who cannot be in the building today. So just to give you a quick rundown, format's going to be similar to the last time, but if you did not watch or were not able to be here, I'll let you know that we're going to do brief introductions. First is going to be Doug Kilburn, who's offering his time unopposed for the Trustee of Public Funds. I will then ask questions that were submitted by the community. We have approximately an hour for that. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to address the questions. We will ask you that you limit yourselves to 2 minutes. Doug has volunteered to be the timekeeper for this evening. These are questions that were submitted online. Perhaps some of you submitted questions online, or perhaps you will hear questions that you were intending to ask that were already submitted. After that point, we will turn to open questions, so we'll allow for anybody in the audience to ask questions. The event is going to come to a close no later than 8 o'clock. And just to remind you that voting day is June 2nd, so early voting is already happening, but please make sure you go and you make your voice heard. One last comment before we get started, rules of engagement, and there is really only one rule, and that is to be respectful. So again, candidates, this is a forum in order to be able to present yourselves and present your views. It's not a place to challenge the people who are running against you. I will interrupt you and I will turn off your microphone if it gets contentious or we devolve into attack politics. And I will tell the community the same thing. We are here to get information. We are also going to be respectful. This is a hard job that these people are volunteering to do. They're not required to be here. So please, again, recognize that they are trying to put their time in to be able to do the best that they can for our town. We're not looking for gotcha moments. We are looking for answers to questions. So without further ado, I'm going to step aside and let Doug Kilburn introduce himself.
Good evening. My name is Doug Kilburn, and I'm running for 1 year of an unexpired 3-year term for Trustee of Public Funds. Since it's a unique position, I will read you from the town website about a Trustee of Public Funds. Trustees of public funds manage real or personal property held by the town in trust for any purpose. Trustees also serve as ex officio members of the Investment Advisory Committee. The Investment Advisory Committee advises the Select Board on the town's financial investments. And about me, I was born in Manchester a long time ago, and I've been a continuous resident of Manchester for 50 years. My wife Cynthia and I retired in January of 21 after owning Doug's Auto Parts for 34 years and Kilburn's Convenience Store for 33 years. Since the summer of 22, I've helped in the town office on a part-time basis with special projects, as well as intermittently helping the assessor's office and the zoning office. I served 3 two-year terms on the select board from 91 to 97, and served as the chair of the Cemetery Commission from 97 until 2008. I've been one of the 3 members of the town water board since 1994. I care deeply about this town, and I thank you for your interest in the town government. I ask that you vote for me on June 2nd for trustee of public funds. I'm now going to step down to allow you the maximum time to learn about the 4 candidates for the select board. I'll be around after the program and attempt to answer any questions that you may have.
So I recognize we went through this last time, but because this is a new audience and it may be new people tuning in, I would like to give each one of you perhaps 2 minutes to just kind of introduce yourselves to the individuals who are in the room. So Wes, let's start with you.
My name is Wes Standard. I was born and raised in Manchester, Vermont. I went to school at MEMS and then went to school at Burton, graduated in 1999. I left for about 10, 12 years. Lived in Boston and then lived in New York City where I met my wife. And then we decided to move back to Manchester in 2012. Since then, I've ran a successful paint business, and that kind of turned into a restaurant that my wife and I ran for about the past 8 years. We live in Manchester. We have 2 young kids that are at MEMS currently, and they will be going to Burton. And I'm just trying to give a voice to the people of this town. I know a lot of people from around here that are originally from here and that have moved here since I've been back, or maybe even more recently. And I just want to do my best to support the people of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
Yeah, my name is Jackie Wilson, and I was born on Cape Cod, Hyannis, Massachusetts. That's where I'm originally from. But I moved here in 1986. My husband became the town manager, and so I came along, and I had 3 young sons in tow, and we relocated here, so a little over 40 years ago. At the time, shortly after I got here, I went to work at the Quality Restaurant, which is now Thai Basil, but Quality was here for years, so I got to know a lot of locals there. I worked there for 7 years and waitressed at night while my husband, when he got home from work, and I went to waitress at night. And I then also started, though a few years into that, I also started back at Castleton State College. I had done a little para-educator stint at MEMS, and I loved it. So I was very interested in education, went back and got my teaching degree, and I started teaching at MEMS in 1992. And after that, 7 years of teaching, I was kind of coerced into being an assistant principal. I said I'd do it for a year, and then I never left administration after that. I really loved it. So I became a co-principal there, then the principal, and I retired in 2020. And when I retired, I was a superintendent of schools for BRSU. So I spent 28 years in education here, and 26 of them were in the BRSU in Manchester and in that area. My kids all grew up here. This is certainly home to me now, for sure. I've been here for 40 years, and I now have 2 granddaughters that live here. One is graduating from BBA this year. The other goes to BBA next year, and it's a place I love. It's home. It's given me a lot. I really grew up here. I became an educator. I became a leader, and I'd like to give something back. So that's why I'm doing it.
Thank you. Mike?
Hi, I've lived in Manchester longer than any of the candidates, and maybe all of them combined, but that's not a reason you should vote for me. By nature and training, I'm analytical, skeptical, strategic, hard-headed, and relentless. My values include loyalty, civic duty, critical thinking, justice, leadership, accountability, and transparency, real transparency. I believe strongly that our local government should be a model of representative democracy. I strongly subscribe to Chapter 1, Article 6 of the Vermont Constitution that says all government officials derive their power from the people, are trustees and servants of the people, and are at all times must be accountable to them in a legal way. These beliefs of mine and my relentless insistence upon them do not endear me to some current and former select board members when I call them out. However, if our treasured American experiment in self-government is to survive, we must not forget what Arlo Guthrie called the Patriot's dream. We need a select board that focuses more on its own accountability and transparency. The select board should act as trustees and servants of the people rather than keeping critical information from the people. You should vote for me because I'm the only candidate who is running on a platform of real issues. I will ask the uncomfortable questions as your servant and trustee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Sean?
Hello, I'm Sean Dillon, and I just wanted to take a brief moment to thank Paige and the library for hosting us twice. I'm sure you can think of other things you'd rather be doing, but it's good to be here. So I grew up in Burlington. I mentioned this the first time around, but I'll repeat it again. As a young boy, I had a paper route delivering the Free Press. I was involved in politics early because Madeline Kunin was on my paper route, and I was friends with one of her sons. Bernie Sanders was the mayor. I'm dating myself now. And I played Little League with his son. Then we made our way south to Mendon. And right before I was about to start high school, I got the great news that we were moving again to Brandon. So I spent my high school years in Brandon on a horse farm and happily left for New York City to go to college and didn't think I'd be back. And then you have children and realize what better place to raise a family than Vermont, and in particular the North Shire region. And so I came back in 2017 and happy to be here. My experience kind of runs the gamut. I am an attorney licensed in New York and Vermont. I'm also a licensed realtor. I've practiced corporate law in New York City, and while I made a lot of money, I hated it and realized that my values were not money, they were quality of life. And it was for that reason that I'm here. Practiced civil law, didn't particularly care for that either, but got good experience, in particular with real estate. And then currently I am a prosecutor in Bennington County. And I find that work meaningful, it's hard, and it's public service. So through all those lenses, I feel like I have a unique perspective on what are our challenges, what are our strengths, what do people like about our area, what don't they like about our area. We hear this from our clients in real estate. And so I just feel like giving back. Someone called me and asked me if I'd think about it, and I thought about it, and I said yes, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all four. The first question that I'm going to put to you was not the first question that was submitted, but it seems that thematically it might be the most appropriate. So since the first Meet the Candidates Forum on May 9th, you have had time to reflect on the questions and responses. So the question to you is, if any of you want a do-over or the opportunity to add or clarify a previous response to anything that you said on that day. We'll start with Sean and then come this way.
I love do-overs. Someone asked the group about nonprofits, and I didn't ask a follow-up question to better understand what the question meant or what they were getting at. But I did a little digging anyway and looked at the town report and all of the nonprofits in our county and the amount of support and services that they provide to our members. And after I read that, I thought, maybe that's what they were asking us about. And if they weren't, then I need another do-over. But I wanted to just drill down on that and say in more detail, the amount of nonprofits that we have supporting our community and our residents is tremendous. And it's a fabric of our community. I see it daily in our prosecuting work, the support we can offer to victims. It's in the schools. We have the Manchester Business Association. That's a nonprofit that supports our local businesses. It's created specifically for our businesses here in town. There are over 150 members. They generated a lot of revenue through the local tax option last year. And so doing a little research on that particular question, I felt better prepared to talk about not-for-profits after last time around.
Mike, do you have anything you would like to add or do over from last time?
The question presumes that I remember what I said a couple of weeks ago, and that might be a stretch. So I'll pass on that one.
All right, nothing sticks out. Excellent. Jackie?
I do. After that, when I left that Saturday afternoon, I was really bothered by the fact that I had no clue how to answer the question I believe Carl Buckold asked about sustainability and energy and what you would do as a select board member. So I was not sure what would be within our purview and what kinds of things we could do. So I reached out to Carl that night, and he and I talked the next morning, and I said, tell me a little bit about your work, and what are you doing for the town? So he explained to me the grant that had been received for $450,000 to retrofit the town hall, and it really, by the end of our conversation, we talked for about 20 minutes, and by the time we finished, I had a much clearer idea of how maybe when there are things that will come up that we can, as a town, model the right way to do something. So when we are looking at our buildings that we own, let's make sure that we're being as responsible as we can and sensitive to our environment. And, you know, maybe in the future, if we have to buy vehicles, are we looking at EVs? You know, what are the things that we're going to do? So that helped me a lot. And the other one, I had another do-over too, not a do-over, but the short-term rental information, I really wanted to know more about that. So I met with Gordon Black, and he gave me a lot of information about what was going on with the task force, so that was helpful. So I've learned a lot more in a week. Thank you.
Thank you. Wes?
I'll pass.
Okay, excellent. All right, so in that case, Jackie, I'm actually going to start with you to go down this way. The next question is, what changes would you like to see in Manchester? It's very general.
I guess one of the things that bothers me when I look around Manchester sometimes now is that we have too many vacant buildings. So that I think is a little problematic, and I'm not sure what we use those for. I know in the visioning work they talked about some of that maybe becoming housing apartments. Re-looking at how do we get smaller businesses in there. So I think it would be important to always be paying attention to the vitality of our downtown, and to make sure that we're making moves as a select board that can support that, whatever, you know, again, was in our purview to do that.
Thank you. Mike?
I'd like to focus not on the physical environment, but the actual government that we operate under, which the select board does have a lot of input on. And as I said in my opening, I would like to see us become a model representative democracy, where we don't hide things from the people. We make it available to them in an easy to digest form, and we welcome people to meetings and welcome them to make comments at those meetings. And I think there's a lot of work that the select board could do in that regard. And that would be my primary focus.
One change I'd like to see is an indoor facility that would house very active children in our community. This is a great place to raise children, and there are a lot of families doing that. There aren't a lot of indoor places, what I'll call recreation places, for children, particularly if the weather's bad and you're stuck indoors. Those cold, rainy days can be really long if you have very active children. Some of them like to come here and throw books, Paige. I've seen it happen.
I've cleaned them up.
But I think there is a need for that. We would have to be creative in how that would be accomplished and built and paid for. But I certainly think there's a need for it, and there's an ability to do that if it's done the right way.
I completely agree with Sean on that one, especially having 2 young kids in this town that we live in. We have the library, which is fantastic, and it's a great space. And, you know, we have a lot of options here for some kids, but we don't have a place that they can just go after school and engage in just social stuff or tutoring or whatever it might be. And we can find places in this town to make that happen. Clearly, the housing issue in Manchester is huge, and that's something that I would love to see change. I know that the select board has been working on stuff in various places across the town, but there hasn't been a real solid solution to that problem yet. And I think promotion of small businesses, small local businesses in this town is something that really needs to be focused on in the next 5 to 10 years, just because of the change in our tourism and retail business that we do in the town. I'd also love to see way more people in this town be engaged in our local government and just have a stronger sense of community. I mean, we do have a great community here, but I feel like there is a bit of a disparity between maybe folks that have been here for a long time and folks that have moved here more recently. And how do we get these people together to help one another and to support our town and our town government?
Great, fantastic, thank you. I'm going to go to Mike. This is going to be your question first. So
Okay.
what role should the select board play in the financial oversight of the town?
Well, they have the primary role. We used to have some checks and balances that have been eliminated in favor of consolidating more power in the select board. So what I would like to do is see the select board actually take responsibility for the things that are happening. We have an audit that says for 3 years in a row that the general ledger doesn't balance to the checkbook. And for 3 years in a row, the town has responded, we will balance it on a monthly basis, yet it still appears in the audit as a negative finding. So that's a very good place for the select board to start focusing on getting that task accomplished.
Great. Sean?
So the role of the select board in the oversight of finances is pretty clear. They set the budget for the town, so they have oversight of that. I mentioned last time that if folks wanted to learn more about what is the role of the select board, there's a really wonderful website where you can go and learn about it. It's not super boring, I promise. That's the Vermont League of Cities and Towns website. It clearly spells out the role of the select board and what they can and can't do. And setting the budget for the town is certainly one of those things.
Wes, you want to go next?
I think it's very important for the select board to run financial oversight for the town. We do have a town meeting every year where residents of the town are allowed to vote on the different financial issues that we face. But if there is a discrepancy via this audit, that's something that we should be focused on figuring out, especially if there's a negative balance.
Jackie?
Yeah, I think that as the select board has 3 main functions when it comes to finance. The first one is that you should be, of course, building that budget that is responsive to the needs of the community, provides some of the services they need, and addresses infrastructure. But that always has to be, the flip side of that is it has to be at a cost that's reasonable to the taxpayers. So that budget building needs to be very thoughtful. I think the other thing that is really important is to, and I used to make sure, we did a lot of modeling of this when I was a superintendent, that your tax rate has some stability to it, so that you're not going to have huge fluctuations. So to do that, you always need to be looking into the future. So you should have a capital plan. And I don't know, I know the town does some capital budgeting, but I don't know that they have a capital plan in place that really identifies, here's what's going to happen in 3 years, and we need to make sure that we are budgeting for that. So, so we don't have fluctuation in our tax rate. And I think the last one, and it's been mentioned, is I always insisted upon a clean audit, and I would insist upon a clean audit if I were on the board. Thanks.
Fantastic. Okay, this question came up at least 3 different times over the last week and a half, so I will just kind of toss it out there. I think, Wes, it's been a minute since I started with you, so what plans might you be able to have to encourage good-paying jobs to come to Manchester? And having said that, of course, with the reminder that what can a select board actually do and what can individuals actually do? I specify that because people like to submit questions that are fabulous, big, and grandiose, but aren't necessarily things that town government has much control over.
Again, I'm not sure if that's necessarily in the scope of the select board's main objectives for the town. Of course, we want everybody here to have a livable wage and a higher paying wage. After running a restaurant in town for the past 8 years and knowing a lot of people in that, industry, it's apparent that if you're working as a server or a dishwasher or a line cook or any of these jobs, to try and survive in this town, either buying a house or renting a home here, based on that wage, it's nearly impossible. And that goes for all the retail jobs in Manchester too, and I would say most of the contracting work here too. How do we change that? It's a tough problem to solve. I think here the wages are not necessarily terrible compared to a lot of places, but it's the cost of living that has now skyrocketed here to a level that even from 10 years ago, it's totally different, right? If you look at the housing market via buying a home or renting a place here, it's crazy. It's really, really hard for young people to try and survive here on the wages that they're getting paid. As a select board member, perhaps we could incentivize more small local businesses to utilize some of these abandoned spaces that we have in town. If there was a way to get money out of the town budget to maybe split some of these big buildings into smaller spaces and then use them as a mixed spot, or I just feel like there's a lot of vacant space in the town that could be used for new jobs. So, yeah, I'm out of time. I gotta stop talking now.
I didn't even see you hold up the sign that time. Okay. With Vanna White, I missed it. So let's just go straight down the line. Jackie, you next, please.
Can you repeat that again for me, please?
Sure.
Thank
So what ideas would you have to be able to encourage higher paying jobs, good paying jobs to come to Manchester?
Again, I think that's a hard, a select board, I don't know how I really answer that honestly about what we could do as a select board member. But I think one of the reasons folks come here is because Manchester's a pretty beautiful place. And we have good services, and we have great recreation, and we have a quality of life that is really attractive to people. It's why I came, it's why I stayed. So I think when as select board, we can really work on making sure that that's a priority for us, is to really preserving the quality of life that our citizens enjoy in this community, and do whatever we can that's under our purview to make sure that happens. And then, of course, working with, working with our local businesses and just listening to them and any ideas they might have as to what would be helpful to them, where are their barriers, where are their challenges. So just really being that listener too, and trying to, come up with some creative ways to move forward as a community. Thanks.
Mike?
The question, I think, had to do with how do we get higher paying jobs here? And I think that's should be a main focus of the new town plan that we're dealing with. The select board approves a town plan after it's drafted by the planning commission. We're not under the gun at this point of having to adopt a town plan right away, so we should take the time to be sure that it's done right, and before the select board accepts it and adopts it as their own, ensure that those questions are answered. I believe that's what the Planning Commission is focusing on now, and we should give them a chance to do their job. There's another thing that everybody's talking about, the housing situation, but 6 months ago now, we had a developer who wanted to build housing in Manchester, was ready to go, and there was conflict over the site where he wanted to do it. He then proposed a solution which everyone on the select board said was a great thing, and they agreed that in 90 days they would work out an agreement. And here we are 180 days later, and where's the agreement?
So I would answer that question by circling back to something I talked about the last time we were here, which is good relationships come from good communication. So what can the select board do to work on higher wages for folks coming here? Talk to successful businesses that are already here. Ask them what worked for them. Also talk to businesses that didn't make it and ask them what didn't work for them so you understand the pain points. The select board can guide ordinances. They can guide policy for the town. They can also keep the town thriving. I don't want to be focused on the negative all night long. I think we have a great place here and we're doing pretty well. There are a lot of successful businesses. Vermonters are independent and creative by nature, and I think a lot of the successful businesses we have here are the same way. Someone had an idea and they had a dream about it and they followed through on it and they made it work. And there are a lot of those stories in town, in our greater area. So keeping our place a desirable place to be will help drive others come in with big ideas. I mean, look at all the new businesses that have opened in the last year in town. Yes, there are vacancies. They're also being filled with new businesses. And some of them have some really good ideas. And if you have really good ideas and fill a need that people have, you're going to earn a good wage.
Thank you. I'm going to try and make it a little less confusing this time around. So I think Wes just started, so Jackie, I'll have you start with this next question. There's been a lot of discussion recently in the meetings around the town planning about walkability in Manchester, and I'll add to that bikeability in Manchester. So how do you see this fits into the purview of the select board, and what can the select board do, perhaps, in order to be able to achieve the end of making the town more walkable and more bike-friendly?
Well, of course, we're responsible for infrastructure in our town. So I think the walkability focus needs to be on the downtown, making sure that that downtown, the quality of our sidewalks is good, and I think it is, but I could be wrong on that. And that folks can get from one place to another in the town walking. Biking, I think, I was out biking the other day, and I was going to call the select board and complain because I'm just kidding, but the bike path part of Route 1130 was full of gravel, and I'm like, don't you know that people on bikes don't like gravel? So can someone clean this road? So I think it's being tuned into a lot of, we have some, I mean, I don't have too much trouble biking through town, but I would like to have what we have in good shape. So I think it's really tuning in to those things. And as far as the whole walkability, again, I think that's kind of connected to all of our discussions around the visioning and the town plan. You know, if we have some thoughts about how things are going to shift with the town plan, if there's some recommendations made, then I think that should be part of it. Thanks.
Mike?
Yeah, in my lifetime, there have been dramatic increases in the walkability of the town. So it doesn't stand out to me as big of an issue as it may to some others. But I do believe that we came through a period where we used to want to have sidewalks right next to the road so that the truck that's plowing the road can plow the sidewalk at the same time by putting the wing down. And we've moved gradually towards separating the pedestrians from the road traffic with a green strip. I think that's a good thing. I think we need to continue with that. And obviously, we need to think about that in our zoning and planning processes to be sure enough space is set aside to do those kinds of things.
I think the select board has already done a great job. I walk around town almost every day, and the select board was involved in the bridge that is near the town green. I know that was somehow controversial for folks, or some folks. I think it's beautiful. There are people in this room that helped make that happen, and they had a vision, and I think it was a really good idea. The same goes for the rail trail. I rode my gravel bike on that this morning, and it's a tremendous asset to our community. I know folks walk on it, they run on it, they bike on it. Jackie, we should talk about gravel bikes. It would solve your problem. And what does the select board have to do with it? A lot. They have to do with the infrastructure. They have to do with the roads. They have to do with the bridges. They have to do with policy and ordinances, like I said earlier, so they can really be involved in continuing to make this a walkable, bikeable town, which strengthens our community. The more people that are out on walks bump into a neighbor or a person they might not have met before, and they strike up a conversation. It just makes the community that much stronger.
Wes?
As a person that recently has been learning how to walk again, I would say that Manchester's walkability at this moment is fantastic. We live in a town where we can walk from the south end all the way to the north end on a sidewalk for the most part and get to cool places like the town green or the recreation park. And I think via the previous select boards that they've done a fantastic job in changing how it was before. Growing up here as a kid, it definitely was not like the way it is now. It's back when we still had Malfunction Junction where the Rotary is, and the sidewalks were not great, and there was never a bike lane anywhere. And I think that the way it stands right now is great. I think the select board in the future should maintain the current plan and just keep it going the way it is right now. I don't see walkability as a thing that will change hopefully in the future. And I'm glad to see the changes that we've had.
Great, thank you. Switching gears just a bit here. The next question up is, let's see, and I started Jackie, so I guess I'm starting with Mike this time. How might the town be able to mitigate possibilities of flooding due to heavy rains?
Well, a couple of observations on that. Number one, we've focused mostly on rain events that have hit the East Mountain and through Bromley Brook and Bourne Brook have created a lot of problems in the Green Mountain Estates, Richfield Road area. We're working on that. There are obstacles like the bridge of Richville Road over Bourne Brook that the town needs to be aware of and keep looking at. Completing the Richville Road transaction would open up another whole block of land where flood mitigation could happen. There's been one parcel that's been sold to FEMA, and the town will be able to use that for flood mitigation. But we can't forget that there are storms that come that hit Mount Equinox and affect an entirely different part of the town. So it's good that we're focusing on the East Mountain, but we need to look at both, and we need to keep looking for creative ways to deal with the issue. And I think we've started that on the East Mountain, and we need to keep going. Finish the deal.
Sean?
So to me, the best way to mitigate flooding risk is to be educated. 100-year floods aren't 100-year floods anymore. They happen regularly. Knowing that is helpful. There are updated FEMA maps that have been put out recently. Those are important to know about. So mitigation would come in the form of education and preparation. So knowing where those flood zones are, how they've changed over time, can help guide where we're going to have more issues down the road. I was able to work with a client in Weston who had flooding concerns, and it's remarkable how much things have changed in a short amount of time. And so being aware of the risks, being aware of where to approve building and where not to, because if you approve something thinking it might be a good solution to one problem, you might be creating another or perhaps multiple problems. So education, knowing where those maps are and watching them change over time would help save the town a lot of headache in the future.
Wes?
I think all these ideas that have been said so far are great. Another thing to think about in terms of mitigation would be talking to the people of the community to ask where it does flood also. There's clear places in town where it floods a lot of the time, and those I think have all been identified, but where I live, it's up on top of a hill, and my house is flooded out 3 times since we moved back here. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people in the different areas of the town. And like Mike said, we don't know necessarily where these storms are going to come from, and we could be prepared in one place and maybe not in another. So just talking to everybody that lives here to see where the maximum damage is happening, and then talking to consultants to see what we can do to fix these problems is probably the best approach.
Yeah, it seems like the town has been paying attention to that, and you know, they've done some work. You know, Green Mountain Estates, I believe now that the town took that road over. Am I correct in that? They took that road over, and that used to be privately owned, so they're sensitive to that. And I think we have a highway department that's, you know, it's unbelievable. So they really do excellent work, and I think as you know, the important thing is to be aware of, you know, what the possibilities are to keep that communication going, the highway department up to speed, citizens in our community, if they're experiencing issues, you know, make it sure that we're accessible to hear that, and to really start to problem solve about ways that we can support them. And you know, I know that the properties down on Richville and East Manchester, where it comes out there was a lot of flooding there, and I believe FEMA has purchased those properties, so the town will have, you know, be able to do something in those areas that might be, you know, nice, whether it's a park or whatever it turns into for the town, but it's also a place where we can try to, you know, eliminate some of the problems that were happening there. So I think we just keep on keeping on with keeping the conversation open, and it's going to keep changing, and we can't predict. Some of the last ones we've had, we didn't predict they were going to be this bad or where they were going to be, but we do know where some of the places are. So let's pay attention and keep in communication with those folks.
Okay, thank you. The next question I'm going to ask, it seems to me, was put not necessarily to know what any of you would do or say as select board members, but perhaps just to kind of get a pulse of where you stand on larger issues. So, Sean, I'm going to start with you, and the question is, what is your stance on the current Act 181 discussion as it relates to the Manchester area?
That is a ever-evolving act. It's hard to keep track of it. I think that it has the potential to benefit our town, but we have to see where it shakes out. There's been a lot of pushback from more rural areas with regard to Act 181. As for in town, I don't know that it would have a big impact on us. It's more on those rural areas and fights over those roads that are going to change things. If it lessens some of the Act 250 process for folks who want to build apartment buildings, for example, that would be a huge benefit for us. But until we know where it's actually going to shake out, I think we just have to wait and see.
Based on a lot of the resistance that I've been seeing about Act 181, you know, I don't think it's necessarily an issue for the select board to make a decision on their stance about Act 181, but I know that there's been a lot of input about Act 181, perhaps encouraging things like data centers to open up in our state, and from everything that I've gathered, I don't think that would be good for Vermont at all. I know that those things aren't explicitly linked, but there's certainly some concern about that, and yeah, that doesn't seem good to me. But again, I don't think the Select Board of Manchester can't approve or deny Act 181, so.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not seeing a lot of relevancy with Act 181, and our work is on the select board, so, and it may just be that there are so many moving pieces that I don't have my head around that to understand what the possible impact could be, or if there would be any impact on this community. So it's just not something that I've really, given a lot of thought to.
Okay. Mike?
It's a moving target. And it's pretty hard to pull the trigger until the target stops moving. I think it will affect the town of Manchester, depending on what is done, but it's in a state of flux. I haven't checked today. I checked yesterday. There was a change, a large change from the day before, and I'm sure there'll be a bigger change tomorrow, so hard to comment.
Fair enough. I think, Wes, I think I'm up to you for starting with the question. This kind of goes back to something that was brought up a little bit earlier, but there was a direct question asked about this. Do you think that the select board should direct public money into town centers or other locations for younger individuals to socialize? And if so, what and where?
Absolutely. We already spoke about this once. I know that there's several properties in town that could be utilized. I think the courthouse is a place that's vacant currently, and there's been some talk about what to do there. I don't know how much money should be directed towards the youth center in Manchester, but as a person, I think the only person on this panel that has 2 young kids in school currently, it's super important. There's some stuff for kids to do. Sean mentioned this earlier. In the wintertime, where can you go after school other than going home? I mean, you can stay at the school, which you probably don't want to do. You could come here, but as a 12 or 13-year-old, probably not the place where you want to be quiet and not playing
You
around.
obviously haven't been here at 3:30 in the
Well,
afternoon.
that's what
on a
I mean,
weekday.
But
It is far from quiet here in the afternoons.
and as a person that grew up here and went to all my school years in Manchester, it's something that we always wanted as kids, and we never had. So I would love to see that happen. Again, I don't know how much money the town even has to direct towards something like this, but it's clearly something that we need in Manchester, for sure.
Jackie?
I think I would work with the Recreation Department to see what makes sense and what we could do to add. It's probably more that middle level age kid. that we'd want to pay some attention to, because there's not a whole heck of a lot for them to do. However, I will say, it's amazing how many kids play sports. I mean, almost every kid I know is involved in some type of sporting activity. And there are some after-school clubs. So I think that our community really tries hard to wrap around our kiddos. And, but it would be nice if they had a place to go. We're traipsing them down to Bennington if they want to see a movie. I know the movie discussion came up in the town visioning as a big thing. So absolutely, but I think I would have those discussions through the recreation department, engage those folks, and they do run some camps. But is there a space? Is there something we can do? Is there some access we can provide at the rec itself that can increase chance for those kids to get together?
Mike.
We're a small town. We can't do everything. I see my friend and classmate Bill West in the back, and he and I remember when the recreation department was the trunk of Coach Parada's car, which used to park on the lawn out in front of the school, and we thought that was a pretty good recreation program at the time. We might do archery one day, and we might play softball if we had enough people for teams the next day. In the town plan, I think we're in the shopping list phase right now, and that will shake out, I'm sure. And it's the hard part of how much can we afford to do, and what are effective things that we should do. I think if kids are saying now that there's nothing to do in Manchester, send them to me and I'll take them back to 1955 and tell them what nothing really was.
Sean.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Do you think the select board should direct public money into some town center or other locations for younger individuals to socialize? And if so, what and where?
So yes, I do. I know I kind of brought it up earlier about a rec center for indoors. Just to dive into that a little deeper, my thoughts on that are a multi-purpose venue. So it could house anything from little kids' birthday parties to perhaps indoor track, exercise classes for kids, indoor gym, indoor floor hockey, any number of things. We have an amazing rec park. It's a hub. Other people come to it from out of town too. So I would not only try to direct some of our funds toward it, but I would try to seek out investments from other areas to help offset any costs. And I think something of that magnitude would certainly require private money. So it would be a combination of things.
Great, thank you. Based on time, there are more questions that were submitted, but based on time, I'm going to ask one more question from the form that was put out on the website, and then open it up to anybody in the audience. This question I had at least 4 times hit my inbox. So, Jackie, I think we are up with you. So here it is. Should the select board members have term limits? If no, why not? If yes, why?
I believe in term limits. I think it's important, and I'll give you an example. I mentioned at the first meeting that I've been on since I retired in 2020. I got right on the board of the North Shore Day School. My term expires this year, so I've been on for 6 years, and I think I've brought a lot to that organization in that time. But we had a meeting yesterday looking at potential people that were interested in joining our board, and I was really excited to hear about some of their backgrounds and some of the energy that they would bring to that board. So I think it's important to have changeover, and I'm not saying that 6 years is the magic number, but I am a believer in that there's a beginning and an end to your time on the board.
Thank you. Mike?
I don't believe in term limits. I believe the ballot box is the term limit. But I can say that if you elect me, there are a limited number of terms that I can serve.
Yeah, Sean, follow that one up.
I do believe in term limits. One of the things I touched on last time we were here was when I came back, one of the things I struggled with at the first job I took in Vermont was hearing a lot of people say that's the way we've always done it. I don't like that answer. And I think if you don't have term limits, you run the risk of hearing that a lot, which is, well, that's the way we've always done it. And you might miss out on some new ideas from some people who might have some good ideas, but wouldn't get elected because you're not part of the old boys network, for example. So term limits would prevent that. They would allow the injection of new people with new ideas. And the one thing you might risk losing is institutional knowledge. I don't think you would lose that in our town. We have so many people who have so much institutional knowledge who are willing to pitch in that it wouldn't be a great loss. And it would, the offset is so great to actually have term limits and get new people in seats.
Thank you. Wes?
I think we should have term limits, if anything else, just to encourage new, younger people to get involved with our town government. If there was more of a turnover, I think it would definitely engage younger folks around here to get involved and to get out there and use their new ideas to help our community. So, yes.
Great, fantastic. So with that being the questions that were submitted online, I will open it up to the floor. Doug has the microphone, so again, remember that GNAT is recording, so please do not ask your question until you have had the microphone handed to you. You, by all means, may direct a question to a particular candidate, and then that question can be opened up to anybody else who would like to address it, or you can ask a question to all four. So show of hands. I think I saw a green sweater. I think I saw your hand first. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I apologize. Melissa. Hi.
Hi, my name is Melissa Stanton. I'm fairly new to town, just moved here last November, but I'm very glad to be here and to attend these events. I just wanted to make a comment. A lot of talk about the need for an indoor community center, recreation center, definitely. But please make it a place that really, multi-purpose for people of all ages. I know, tonight I usually take a line dancing class. The teacher is teaching it in a crowded room at the VFW because there really isn't a public facility for that. And we have so many talented people in the community who can come in and teach classes or, run bingo or trivia or whatnot. It would be nice to have that as a community place rather than having to, always go to a restaurant and, spend $100 and, to do trivia. And for people to be able to, host different classes for everybody.
Melissa, do you have a particular question, or just you wanted to make the statement? Okay.
Don't just focus the community center on little kids.
Okay. Thank you.
Can
and
I
Kath-
answer that?
Oh, sure, Mike, go ahead.
Meet Bill Drunzik, seated right over there.
I think Kathy was next, if you want to.
Kathy Penji. I think I know a lot of you. I have a lot of comments on what was said, and a lot of your questions would be the same questions that I would have had for the board. My concern has been that when I go to select board meetings, I feel somehow that the select board is making a rubber stamp on what's being brought to them on a regular basis, and they are not the bottom, the middle, and the top of what is being brought to us as the town for information on things that are going on, and that's very disappointing to me. The decision is made by the time it gets to the select board. That's my opinion right now. I think you all know that my advocacy has always been for young children and kids in between, and now for old people like myself. So if there were to be a recreation department, And I personally think that the library is doing a yeoman's job covering all those ages at this point. And I think that it is not necessarily the library's job to do that. That is the town's job to take care of the people that are in the town in many different ways. Now, there is a rec committee, there is a rec park. However, if you were here and you're keeping your eyes out and you had young children and now grandchildren in this town and students that you took there, you could see the decline in the basic things that are in the rec area. The playground set that was put up was probably put up by your dad and by my husband, and all of you guys are up near 50 now, and it has not been repaired. There are parts of it falling apart every day. I can tell you that my youngest child, who is 34 now, was the tail end of the sprinkler system that was there for young children, that when it went down, we were told it would be redone. She's moved on. She's an adult now in her 30s, like I said. We don't have a sprinkler still for preschoolers. I have asked for it through years and years of running the end of my preschool, and now for my grandchildren. And I'm being told possibly that will be there. I visit with parents when I take my grandchildren to the rec area, and they talk about what is not there. Right now, I can walk through there and give you heaven knows how many hazardous situations just waiting to affect a child. There are nails coming out of the boundary perimeters of the playground that I saw personally 2 weeks ago, a 2-year-old trip over, and there's nothing the parent could do because they are anchored into the ground and the parent can't take them out and make the place safer. But somebody is not supervising that to see that it does become safer. The other thing is the equipment's beautiful, but it has no shade. So when you go there in the summertime, if it is 85 or 90 degrees, children don't play on it. We bring towels for our kids to go down like a Coney Island slide because there is no place for the kids to be sheltered when they go to the park. Bennington has little shades over their playground equipment. That doesn't take that much. But I think that when you're looking at something to be taken care of, you need to look across all factors that are involved in that. You just don't build something beautiful and not say, are there enough bathrooms? Are they opened enough? Is there enough overhead for the people to be sitting in the shade? Is it inviting in every possible way? I would
Kathy-
say an indoor
Kathy,
facility.
I'm just going to stop you for a moment.
Okay.
So thank you very much. I appreciate
That's
all of your
all on
opinions.
that.
Do you have anything that you want to specifically ask the candidates?
I'd like to know in terms of the jobs and the housing and all of the things that go around that we've talked about. Do you consider it the select board's responsibility, and this is sort of a loaded question because I already know myself how I would answer it, to look into the many other things that are involved when we build a lot of housing? Do we know that we have medical care to take care of the people that come in here? Because we're pretty short of it already. Do we know that we have jobs that can employ people well enough that they can afford what is going to come with the housing that is here? Do we know that our infrastructure is going to be kept up with in order to get these people from their homes to places in the town? So I don't see it as finding the solution unless you have the forethought and the back thought to what has brought you here in the first place. So how do you see that as your job?
I think it should be part of the select board's job to figure out how the other parts of this housing is going to work out and how it's going to affect our community. I think you're right. I know that we have a housing task force that was formed. I'm not sure if part of that, if the responsibility is to deal with the medical issues or vetting the people that are coming to live in these spaces. And like you said, where are they going to work? And how's that part all going to flesh out? And how does building something like this affect everybody around it? But it definitely should be a part of the select board's job to figure out all parts of the housing issue, especially the negative, if there is any, you know. Clearly, we need more housing in Manchester, there's no doubt about that, but it has to be done in the right way where everybody's happy with it. And I think that the main way that you get there is like you coming here today and talking about it. You know, I think there has to be more open public conversations about this with everybody in town, to really hear what they have to say about it and where we should do it, and, you know, make sure we're all on the same page with this problem, you know.
Does anyone else want to address Kathy's question about infrastructure with housing?
I just want to add that I think you can't, and I think this is happening in the discussions that is happening with the visioning work, is that you really can't have the discussion about housing without the discussion around, you know, economic development. So those two things have to go together. So you have to look at the complete picture. And so I think any recommendation that comes as a result of this process, I would hope that those things are they're intertwined and both are addressed. And of course, there's always that infrastructure. That is a direct responsibility of the select board, is, you know, do we have the infrastructure to support what is going to happen? So I would expect that, Kathy, you kind of highlighted those main things that should be considered, and it should be a very thoughtful process going forward.
I would tell Kathy that the answer is yes, you have to consider everything, especially major investments like housing. No decision should be made in a vacuum. It all has an impact upstream and downstream, and so what are the unintended consequences that need to be considered? It could be your comment around infrastructure, access to medical care. Those are all things that have to be considered before anything is done. So if there's this great housing crisis, you can't make a snap judgment to try to address one thing because you might create two other issues. And so, in part, there is a housing task force created a few years ago by a person on the select board. And it's a thoughtful task force that's trying to address those things without rushing to any one judgment, because you do have to consider everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the discussion of Act 181, and part of Act 181 is to exempt housing projects from Act 250 review. And Act 250 review is where many of those considerations are considered. And if you exempt it, that means you're taking away that review. And the impact on municipal services is a specific criteria of Act 250 that has to be addressed. And so be careful what you wish for. Eliminating the protections that we have is not the path to solving the problems that we have. So I do believe they're intertwined, and I think part of that planning is to not toss the baby out with the bathwater.
Great. Other questions? Tina.
Hi, my name is Tina Cook. I am a 27-year resident of Southern Vermont. I've been for the last year and a half digging into the current use grand list and also each town's grand list. And I've been matching up the data. And what I've been finding is that the current use program is currently being gamed by out-of-state, multinational, billion-dollar corporations that pay zero property taxes. There is no way the community can continue to function when most of its revenue is not being collected. So my question is, how many of you are familiar with the current use program?
I am.
Okay. And have you been seeing that as well? Like,
No.
for instance, do you know who our largest landholder in Vermont is?
The Carthout, in Vermont or Manchester?
In Vermont, in general?
No, I have no idea in Vermont.
It's in the current use data. And that's very important. So the largest landholder in Vermont is Weyerhaeuser. They are a timber corporation. They do not employ Vermonters. They do not contribute anything into the education fund. So we don't really have a housing problem. What we have is a tax participation problem, and that has created the housing problem. So for the last 50 years, no legislation has been enacted for regular rural landowners. It has all been slowly being eroded and power given to large special interest groups. So the oversight, for instance, school consolidation is a huge problem. They're threatening to bus our kids, what is that, up towards Rutland, just to save tax dollars for the wealthy. That makes no sense. So in essence, Vermonters, regular Vermonters, taxpayers, that's what we're going to call it, because there's a section of people that are paying zero taxes, and then there's a section of people who are carrying all of the taxes. So they are being taxed 3 times. First, their property taxes are going up. Then the education fund still has to be paid, and that's being paid by taxpayer dollars. And then we have, what is the other thing we were just talking about, where they're being taxed again? I'll come back to it later. But that's 3 times. You know, we can't afford that. And that's just going to keep going up. So the problem with Act 181 is it is consolidating more of that power to the top while the cost is being pushed down to regular taxpayers. In addition, it is removing oversight locally, which has left the vacuum for this certain program to be gained that way. So,
Thank you, Tina. I appreciate
So
all your
my
commentary.
question
Yeah, the
was-
question.
Yeah, was how many, how deep have you actually gone into the current use grand list and compared it to the Manchester grand list? That's going to be important if you really believe that we need housing, you know, and that we can fix that. Because that's where the problem, we have a revenue problem.
Thank you. I absolutely appreciate the passion and the enthusiasm and the interest of everybody who is in this room. And I do just want to remind you that the 4 people who are sitting up here have no ability to change things that happen on a state level or on a national level. So I would ask us, if we could, to please remember that if we're going to be asking them questions or making commentary about the events that are taking place in town, to recognize that this is not necessarily the platform that's going to solve larger issues, and to speak directly to the select board candidates. So next question up front.
Would you, this is for everybody, would you advocate for adding more units into a particular house? For example, if you have a very large house that is in a particular zone that only allows 2 apartments, would you advocate for putting 2 more apartments in that?
So you're talking about rezoning, or?
I'm not, yes.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, it's what the planning commission would do, but I want to know, because everyone talks about housing, but they don't have a plan on how to get there. Mm-hmm. I'm a landlord, and I have large houses that have 4-bedroom duplexes that really should be 4 2-bedroom apartments. I'm not going to make any more money on it, but that's what would serve the public. Mm-hmm. The free market works really, really well. And yes, I understand you have to worry about the infrastructure and all that. I get it. But you're not going to be able to have all of the lights line up. So you got to start someplace. Allow the property owners to say, hey, I'm going to put, because I put my own money where my mouth is. So take a big house, there's only 2 apartments because that's what zoning allows, and say, you know what, you can put 4 apartments in there. Doesn't increase the footprint of the property, doesn't increase, whether you have a 4-bedroom apartment with 5 people in there or 2 2-bedroom apartments with 2 or 3 people in both of them, you're not really taxing the system anymore, anyway. So the question is, would you advocate for adding more apartments into a particular building. This way, you don't have to go out and find land to build new housing units. You're actually building housing units within, within the building itself.
Anybody want to start with that?
Sure, I'd say. You're talking about a situation which is a very site-specific issue. I would not approve of that as an overall change for every area in the town. I would advocate that that be part of what we look at when we decide how we're going to increase the amount of housing. That I'm sure there are situations like that when it can happen, but to blindly say you can double the number of units in every house is not something that I could approve of.
Anyone else want to field that?
I think it would, yeah, it's site-specific. It depends on where you are in the town. I know that where we live, the deeded rules for our neighborhood states that you can only have so many people living on your property, and you can only have so many structures on your property, so. But I think it's a creative idea, and if there's space to do it with input from the neighborhood, why not? I mean, we need to look into whatever we can do to expand housing in the town, so.
I don't think I could answer that because it is site-specific. I'd want to know, what's the planning board, what's their take on that? It may be that it applies, it could work for your property, but it wouldn't be responsible of me to just sit here and just have heard about this and say, oh yeah, that, I would advocate for that. I'd need to know more.
I think it would have to be a conversation with the planning board and zoning, and it would have to be to a specific area, not just your properties, for example. I think the select board was involved a few years back in looking at changing an area to mixed-use zoning. I think that's the type of thing that would accomplish what you're talking about, but it would have to be done after taking into account all the other impacts. Would there be more traffic on the street? Is there enough parking? All those things that Kathy was alluding to in other areas would need to be considered, and it's not something that the select board would drive directly, but certainly could be a part of a conversation.
Thank you. Bill and Linda are behind you. I think Linda put her hand up first, so, and I'm going to go ladies first anyway.
Oh, ladies.
Domestic peace, I'm going to let the wife go first.
And maybe I have the same thing that he's going to mention. I am very concerned about all of the Airbnbs in this town. It's outrageous that so many people have come in from out of town, bought properties to use just as an Airbnb, and there is a property that can't be used as a rental or as a person who wants to live here full-time. What I'd like to know is, I know that this is probably more of a planning commission thing, but I'd like to know your thoughts on putting in some sort of regulations for these Airbnbs so that they, for short-term rentals, excuse me, that apply also to inns and hotels, motels. They should have the same type of regulations that an Airbnb, or an Airbnb should have the same type of regulation. Thank you.
Gee, we're on the same page.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. If you talk to the guy next to you, he brought this up at a select board meeting a couple years ago. We have the regulation, and I answered at the last meeting, we don't have the will to enforce it. Changing a single-family residence into a short-term rental is a change of use under our existing bylaw, and we need to enforce it. And so the select board can do something. They can direct the planning and zoning department to enforce the zoning bylaw that we already have.
I think I did spend some time after our last meeting learning a little bit more about this issue. I think that we definitely should have some regulation in place and a good model, boy, I read through Woodstock, they 2 years ago, they put some regulation in place to try to deal with this very issue. The problematic part about their plan, I don't know where they got their number. They said you had to limit, your Airbnbs were limited to 55 registered Airbnbs in their community, so it would be interesting to know where how they got that number. But they had, every year the Airbnb has to register, they have to pay a fee. The fee is increased if it's a larger, depending on the housing, you know, how many people that place houses. There's inspection by the fire marshal. There has to be a property manager that can be contacted for every property. I just think that there's some things we could at least start with that would really start to make take the issue more seriously. And then we have discussion about, what's that magic number? Do we even want a magic number? Or is there something else that we can do to regulate the Airbnbs?
So we talked about this a lot at our last forum, and I recognize you may not have been here. But the state has done a lot to try to address this, and the town as well, as Mike alluded to. One of the things, or a few of the things I would point out to you is they are trying to level that playing field with hotels and inns. They now collect a 3% tax on those stays. That wasn't in place a few years ago. If someone buys a property and it's not their homestead, they pay a higher transfer tax when they purchase, significantly higher. That just went up again. It's over 3% now. On top of all the regulatory things they have to do as far as having them maintained, registered with the town, et cetera. So I think things have been done. I would also argue the flip side a little bit and say, we must live in a really great place if people want to have these properties and pay these dollar amounts for these houses, and people are coming here and spending their money in our businesses. That's benefiting the town as a whole. It may not be helping someone who's trying to buy a house, but those houses primarily are on the open market. So if someone has the money to buy that house, buy it.
Doug, behind you, you've got Courtney.
Good evening, it's Courtney Callow. I just want to say thank you, first of all, for running. I hear lots of opinions every day at the donut shop, so I stop them right away and say, run then, be quiet. What I want to know is why you're running. Why should we vote for you? Can you give me sort of a short-term and a long-term goal? I know you've had to think long and hard about why you want to do this. It's a tremendous amount of hours. What's your passion? I know all four of you want to give back to Manchester, but what's the leading thing that you short-term would like to do and long-term like to do?
Well, we went over this the last time, but you weren't there, Courtney, so. That's right, you were working. I said this the last time based on the same question. On this panel of four people, I'm probably the least qualified to have this position. I'm the youngest one also. Mike and Sean are both lawyers. Sean's a real estate agent. Jackie has been a huge part of the education system in and around our town for a long time. And I've run a painting business and a restaurant. But I know a lot of people in Manchester, and what I see, especially with my generation, is just a huge lack of engagement in our community and in our town government. And I want to get people our age more involved because there's a huge transition happening in our town right now where we have a younger generation and an older generation kind of phasing out. And if you look at just how many people my age are interested in this stuff, it's lacking majorly. For me, I just want to be a voice for people from all around the community, whether you've been here for your whole life or you just moved here, and make sure that people that live here know that the town cares seriously about what they think. I think that I can be a pretty level-headed person when it comes to interpreting what their concerns are, and that's my main goal, is to learn from the current select board. Ivan's been there forever, and he's done a really fantastic job, and it would be great to have somebody continue his leadership over the next however many years.
Going down the line. Might as well go down the line, yeah.
So when I know, at first I thought maybe it was just because it was March and I was bored, so that's why I decided to do it. But I've thought, March is tough around here. But I've thought a lot about that. And, I've been retired for 6 years. When I think about the work of a select board, it was new learning for me, because learning the municipal side, which was exciting to me, because I'd like to keep learning. But I also thought that I could bring to it, I've had years of working with governance. I have trained boards on governance. I have worked through really complex consolidation when we went through consolidation in our school district. So I feel like I have a skill set that I can really bring to the table at a time when I think our community, from everything I've heard, and boy, people, as soon as they know you're running, I have been inundated. People stop and talk to me. You go into the grocery store and you think you're going in for 15 minutes, and an hour and a half later you come out. But it's great. They're eager to share their stories and to talk to you about what they're worried about. So I've really enjoyed that, and it's been okay for me. And I think, and again, Courtney, it's interesting, in the time from our last meeting to now, I'm like, what? But why am I really doing this? And for me, I think, I feel like I'm living through a time in my country that it's as dark as it's ever been. I'm really concerned about the lack of civility and the breakdown of community, and people not trusting their leadership. And I felt like this would give me an opportunity to do something. It's tiny, but it's a little something. And maybe I can make it maybe I can make something better. So that's why I'm doing it.
On the dot with 2 minutes there. Well done.
It's not tiny, it's huge. It's a great responsibility, and I don't take it on lightly. As moderator for 25 years, I have to remain neutral on the issues at town meeting, but I observe them, and I observe how things are happening at select board meetings. And frankly, I think we've given up on democracy. And that's a shame, I think. And I believe that it is the best form of government that we have. And I believe if we can't do it in Manchester, Vermont, there's little hope that we can do it through the rest of the country. So we see what happens when power is consolidated in one person, in the executive. And we need to guard against that, but we need to guard against it here in Manchester as well. There is a consolidation of power in the select board, and we need to recognize it, and we need to recognize that that is a problem. And it will only happen by involving more people. And Wes, I agree with you, we need to include more people from your generation. We need to inspire them, and we need to let people know that it's okay to say something that is controversial, to challenge the way things are being done. I don't believe we'll ever face the problems if we focus on getting everyone to unanimously agree to everything. It helps to have dissenting voices. That seems to be my role in this election, and I take it on gladly.
Thank you, Mike. Sean.
I'm running because I think I can help make our community better. I think I have a lot of good ideas. I have a lot of experience. I've served in a number of different roles professionally and personally. I've been a volunteer basketball coach here in town. I'm a field advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I'm just the type of person who, if they think they can help something, that you should roll up your sleeves and pitch in and do something, not just talk about it or complain about it on Facebook. So someone called me and said, there's an open seat, would you consider it? And I considered it. And the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to run. And the more I've been running, the more I want to win. Because I want to help make our community better. Between my wife and I, we have 4 children in various levels of school here in the North Shire area. They've got ideas, they've got needs, so do we. That's my short-term plan. That's the short-term vision that I have. Longer term, I don't know. I like government. I think it can be really frustrating, but I think it can also be empowering, not just for the person in the position, but for the people they represent. And I like representing people. I'm a lawyer. I represent you every day. I'm trying to enforce the laws for Bennington County. So I read statutes and laws, and when I have time, I try to do a little bit of real estate. I think I'm a good fit for the role. And longer term, I don't know if I stay local or try to do something else, but I really enjoy it. I'm positive about it. The seat we're running for is a 20% part of a bigger team. I grew up playing team sports all through college, and I think team sports are really important, and knowing how to deal with other people is really important, and I know how to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie.
Thank you. Thanks all for being here tonight. My name's Katie McNabb. My question is about technology. We're lucky in our community that we have GNAT to help us know what's going on, but I feel that our town government does not do a great job with technology. Our website is, as the kids would say, mid. It's hard to find things. We sometimes post on Facebook. We almost never post on Instagram. So it's hard to know what's going on. And I'm wondering, my question is, how comfortable do you each feel with technology?
We might as well pick one end and go down. Wes, you started last time. Sean, you start and go this way.
I feel comfortable with technology. To your point, I think the technology could be better for the town. I also think there could be ideas to help make it better. There are a lot of students who are better at it than I am, and I bet they wouldn't mind an internship where they could help build something better. And then they could look at that and say, hey, look, that's what I did, and it would help the town and it would help them. So yes, I am comfortable with technology, but I would tell you that I won't be the one who would be implementing a new website, but I might have some ideas on how we might implement a new website.
Mike.
Yeah, I use technology every day. I wouldn't consider myself an expert. I respect the power of technology. I don't do Facebook. I consider it a pit of vipers. And I concur that our website is confusing at best. It seems to be that in the past, we've had a few redos of the website. I'm not sure they've all made things better. I certainly don't think it's up to date with things the way they should be, and the information that it provides is incomplete in many ways. So, yeah, we need to focus on it. I like Sean's idea of getting some younger kids involved in doing it, and that's a way to build participation in government by people of younger generations.
I'm very comfortable with technology. I think we were the first Google school district in the state. So we really got used to using technology to work together, to work collaboratively. So I'm used to working on platforms where I can share ideas with folks and we build products together. So I am very comfortable with technology. I think technology, as far as it goes for the town, is how are we going to communicate what's going on? And so could we certainly do a better job of that, and how do we do that? So I think that could certainly use some improvement, and again, I'm not going to design your web page either. I could do a Google page, but I'm not going to. Maybe John West could do it. He knows what he's doing. I used to go and seek him out when I was a teacher if I needed help with technology. But I've come a long way since then, John. I've gotten a lot better. So yeah, I'm comfortable with it, and I am not a social media person. I know that it has a place for communication, and I think that that we should do some of that. But I'm not. For a whole host of reasons, I do not. I'm not one to engage in that as a back and forth, because I think it skews the communication sometimes instead of making it more clear, or it gets misconstrued. But I definitely feel comfortable with technology.
I think that our town website could definitely be updated. It would be nice to see some more interactive options on there. It would be cool to see a place where you could just submit something right off the page and know that it was going to the right person. But I'm not a person to redesign the website either. Maybe John could handle that, I don't know. But in terms of the social media stuff, I think that the town could do a lot more in terms of engaging the people of Manchester on social media. And I know social media is a pit of vipers, and it's not necessarily a great place all the time. But the fact is, it's a place where people go to get information. And there's select board pages out there, and there's one for the town. There's one, I think, for every current select board member. But it would be nice to see some more engagement on there. And I know that gets a little dicey because people go crazy on Facebook, but it's a place where people go all the time to get information. So it would be nice to see that being kind of pushed a little harder.
Let's go with Bob, somebody who hasn't asked a question yet.
Am I on? Mike, this is for Mike. At the last forum in your opening statement tonight, you implied that the select board are hiding things.
Yes.
Could I ask, would you please elaborate on that accusation that information is being hidden by the board from the people of the town? What information is being hidden? Who's hiding it? And are you implying that there's some sort of corruption or conspiracy going on?
Well, corruption and conspiracy are your terms, not mine. There is an audit report that was delivered to the select board on March 17th. The select board, not in a public meeting, decided not to make that information available, not to discuss it, not to have the auditor deliver his report in person until after this election was over. So call it whatever you want. There is an audit report out there. I have a copy of it if you'd like to read it. And it has a negative finding for the town, and they don't want you to know about it until after the election.
Kathy?
I have a pretty simple question to ask you.
Microphone, please, Kathy, so that Gina can hear.
I'm sorry. I'm not used to this. I have gone to a few select board meetings. What has turned me off at them is the picky and little stuff that the select board does concern itself with. And I'm not saying that this applies to all of us, but when you spend a lot of time about a flag ordinance, and then I have to hear this one's flag is out of compliance and that one's flag's out of compliance, that's not what I'm looking for from the select board. What I am looking for is that when I say, why isn't this done around town, that you don't give me an answer of, we have a committee for that. And nobody personally says, I will be the one to go to the head of that committee and see why that is not being done. And I feel that that's what I need from the select board. And I think years ago, before we got encumbered with committees and committees and committees, the select board did answer those questions. But now, it's some other committee that's going to answer your question, so you might as well not have come to ask that question of the select board.
So Kathy, what is your question for
So my
them?
question is, how many of you are willing to stand up against the other 4 people that might be there if you are the one and only person that is willing to take that step and say, I will do it?
Show of hands, I guess?
I'm your guy.
Kathy,
I don't care who I irritate. I'm 79 years old. And I think you deserve an answer. I believe anyone who serves on the select board is a servant of the public and a trustee for them, and they owe you that duty.
Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Kathy, I think you're owed an answer. I'm not sure what the question, so you mean you've posed a question and they just refer it?
Right now, it seems like the answers that I get usually, most of the answers that I get or I hear that the audience gets are coming as a collective, almost pre-decided answer that the select board is going to give. No one person stands up and says, I spoke against that. I didn't think this was a good idea. I still think there needs to be more work on that, and I will be the one to take the bull by the horns and do that work.
Well, I think
So, I'd like to know what your opinion on that is.
Well, I think what you're talking to me about is, I mean, I think at any time that a decision, that any board, good governance, making a decision, that motion is made to have a discussion, and then you should be having a discussion, and that discussion should be very public. And that's when people are expressing their views on what they feel. The different select board members may have a different view, and the hope is that you'll get to a place where you reach some consensus on how to move forward with something. But I think it sounds to me like you're saying like you're not hearing the discussion, like how do people feel about this, that it's, yeah. And I mean, I think it's just good governance that happens, that those discussions are had publicly.
But then, we don't know who's an advocate for something and who is not. And I think that's important.
Bill, you had a question.
Yes.
Wait for the microphone if you don't mind, please.
I'm sorry. Usually I don't need one. But Bill Drunzik, you talked earlier about economics and how the board is involved in that. And then we've heard conversation about some things that maybe we can do better in this community. So relative to what the select board can do, what is the one thing that you could think you can do? And related to that is, over the years, there's more or less been a policy, I would say, of the select board that we don't raise our taxes by more than 3%. So our budget has been held down, maybe you could say, by that kind of criteria. But if we need to decide collectively that we want to do something else, should that be a limiting factor then? Because things we're talking about require money. And this also needs to be put in context that I know everybody's concerned about their tax bill, but our town budget, our town tax rate is one of the lowest in the state. It's somewhere within, I think, the lowest 10. And it only represents a relatively small portion. I don't want to guess at it, but I think it's somewhere between 15 and 20% of our total tax bill. So are you willing to, let's say, spend a little more money to address the one need that you think does not have enough attention in our community right now?
So Bill, just to clarify, you want them to identify what that one thing is and then discuss whether or not they'd be willing to raise taxes to be able to accomplish that?
Thank you.
So we'll go across the board, so whoever wants to
Could we
stop.
just clarify when you say identify that one thing, what are you talking about?
That we should be addressing.
Do the microphone, so.
That we should be addressing in a greater manner than we are.
Okay.
That it should be a town responsibility, or could be a town responsibility. That we're missing, that we would like to have improve the quality of life in this community.
Bill's not running for office, so he doesn't have to worry about us talking about raising everyone's taxes. So no, I wouldn't support raising taxes. We may have a lower tax rate, but I think that's partially because we have higher property values. So good for us. There should be other ways to fund it. I mentioned it earlier, other towns that can contribute. We're gonna need private money. I'm talking about the rec center. I don't know if you are. But I'm not supportive of raising taxes for that thing.
I'm not sure that a 3% limit has reduced spending. It may have been used as an excuse to raise more money than we really needed. So I'm not in favor of arbitrary limits like that. I don't have any one project that I'm prepared to propose should be the one that breaks the bank, if you will. But I do agree with your position that if there is something that needs to be done, and if the community is in support of that, we should do that, you know? But the way we do that is by proposing something, having a discussion about it at town meeting, and then going with what the decision of the voters was. So it doesn't mean you can't amend it later on. It doesn't mean you can't consider it again. But I believe in that open discussion of town meeting as a way to hash out major issues such as what you might be talking about here, major expenditures. They need to be discussed, and the only way we have to do that is through a town meeting.
Jackie.
Bill, I think that you have to, it's in the absence of, well, there's like maybe two different places where we would want to expend funds. So absence of a capital plan is probably problematic, and we would want a capital plan in place if, and I don't believe that they have a capital plan in place, and you would want that in place because then if there are goals of the community, so again, it's part of a larger commitment on part of the board as you start to look at the results from this visioning work. You know, where do we want to go? The recommendations are going to come. What really matters to us? So if it's affordable housing, and we've looked at that, and we have had a lot of discussions about that, what's the plan for making a move forward with that? And let's look over a multi-year plan on how we do that. And take that in the context of all of the other demands on our tax dollars too. So I don't think I could make that decision and that commitment devoid of knowing what the whole picture is. So I think it's really important. I'm just used to operating in a system where I have a strategic plan and I have a 5-year plan and I have my goals for this year, and this is where we're going to focus our energies and this is where we're going to put our money. And this is where we're going to go out to our stakeholders and say, this is what we care about and this is what we think we should do, and what's your take on that? And get input from them and then make those decisions. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, I'm going to pick that one thing, and yeah, I'm going to raise your taxes. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to see their taxes go up in Manchester again anytime soon. It's been a lot over the past few years. If we're talking about housing, and there's not a way with our current budget to figure out how to do one of these projects in our town, and the only solution is to raise our taxes, that does have to be a conversation with the town and the people of the town, and it's, again, that's a hard thing to identify, and I don't think we could figure this out in this moment right now, but yeah, I don't think anybody wants to see the taxes go up anymore, but if that's the only solution to one of the biggest issues facing our town, we have to have a conversation about it, you know.
In the back, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. I know I should know it, but. David, thank you.
Hi, I'm David. Love the opportunity to jump in right behind Bill, hopefully in the category of great minds. A quick question. After several years of real estate supercycle and moderate economic growth, it appears we may be on the backside of that performance curve. Should the town consider proactively improving its financial position by building a large budget surplus to support rainy day or other funds? If yes, then what would be your preference for creating a surplus? Emphasizing operational efficiencies and tighter budget controls, or supporting policies that prioritize economic expansion and revenue growth?
That was to everybody? David, you want that one for everybody to go across? Excellent. Who wants to jump in? Mike, go for it.
I proposed expending revenues without raising taxes, and the way to do that is to enact a local governance charter. It's not easy. It has to be approved by the voters in the town first, and ultimately it has to be approved by the legislature. But instead of collecting a 1% tax under the general statute that is available to all towns, and which only requires the approval of the voters, the problem with that system is the leaky bucket in Montpelier, because they collect the money and keep more than 30% for themselves. If we enact the local charter, as Rutland and Burlington have done, we could use that same 1% tax and keep 100% of the revenue. And yes, it will take some time, effort of some town employees to collect that tax, but they're already tuned into collecting property taxes, and they manage to do that 2 times a year without hiring any extra help. And I believe this could be done as well by our existing staff. But if we have to hire some part-time people to do that, that'll be more than made up for in the revenue that we will gain from that.
Go ahead, Sean. Yeah.
Sure. I don't know if anyone other than you, David, and I were at the last select board meeting, but that topic was talked about. Mike and Scott, the town managers, looking into that. I just think it's part of good governance to have a rainy day fund. It doesn't matter if it's government or your own personal finances. You should plan for a reserve. So my answer to you is yes, I think there should be. I think we are headed over, I think we're going this way a little bit in the economy right now. So it would be prudent to think about, do we have a rainy day fund in case we need it if things continue to slide? I just think that's good governance.
Wes, you want to take that?
What would this rainy day fund be used for specifically?
I need the mic again. I don't really think that's for me to dictate. There's lots of needs. It could be from housing to infrastructure to support housing, or
And so the question is, how do we allocate this rainy day fund from our current budget.
Not the allocation portion of it, a large increase in a budget surplus was the basis of my question.
And do I support the large increase? I guess it depends on what we'd be using this money for. I mean, and how would it affect the citizens of Manchester, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have a rainy day fund, and we always had a surplus fund in our budgets for the school. And because sometimes we were able to save money in any given year if we were careful, and we put that aside to use it in years when it was needed. So, sure, I support that. I'm not sure about, David, were you asking to do a huge, big increase in the budget to create this?
I think there's a couple different ways you can get there through some budgetary efficiencies, line item this and that, but also just looking toward the growth side. So that's just a general framework. There's lots of in-between there we can choose from. I don't really know what the fund should be used for. I just think that we may not be prepared for projects like what Bill might suggest or Sean suggested for the common good of the community, so to speak. But there also could be some emergencies in there that we might not be able to handle with our current, let's say, lack of excess budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're going to have a surplus fund, I think that's something the voters should weigh in on. So it may be that's part of your budget, and you establish that we have this surplus fund to use for. They're going to want to know what the heck it's being used for. So I would, again, I'm back to that capital plan idea. You better have a plan about where you're going, and so that you know that you're going to have a year, maybe in 2 years, there's going to be a big expense you're going to have. So this is why we want to have this set aside to tackle that. So devoid of a plan, I don't see you doing that. I couldn't support that, but absolutely, if we have made a plan going forward, we want to establish, do some improvements at the rec center, and we're going to do this year and this the next year, and we want to establish some budgetary monies for that. I can support that.
I think we have time for probably one more question. So, Victoria, I saw your hand up last round.
We've heard over the last 2 meetings the word engagement, increasing attendance at select board meetings. Jackie, you used, I think, forums or community meetings in between select board meetings. Wes, you've spoken about the younger generations and trying to get them involved. Could we hear specifically, besides Jackie's, and Jackie, you can add to it tonight, what your vision would be to increase attendance? Sean, I used to go to select board meetings because they were entertaining, and now I find other things like my garden to keep me busy. So what are your ideas to increase engagement and attendance at those meetings? Anything from a different time and place, or day, I mean, to community meetings? Thank you.
So let's just start on one end and go down. Wes, you want to start, and then we'll Sean.
I'm not sure if we could reschedule the current select board meeting times or dates, but I do think a way to create more engagement in town would be have more things like this happening, and maybe just in the same space. There's a lot of issues in the town that we could have more input on from community members. I think, Victoria, you know a lot about just social issues that are happening in the community that nobody likes to talk about, that we need to talk about. And I think that's a big-time serious conversation that we need to have, and we didn't make it public, and we need to have people from our community that are doing a job where their job has now changed because of these social issues, and they're doing things that they probably weren't trained to do or signed up to do. And the only way we can get out in front of those things is to talk about them in a place like this. And I think in Manchester and Vermont specifically, our population is low enough and we have enough interest from people that are passionate about these things where we can change things by talking about them and getting people involved and having conversations that maybe people don't want to have because some of these problems are pretty hard. But they affect us in this community for sure. And I think everybody here knows that. And I think in order to engage more people, we have to have like serious conversations in a place like this where people can come and ask questions and not be scared to deal with the people of their community. And I think it's important for the select board members to make that public knowledge for everybody here that say, you always can say whatever you want. And maybe we can have certain topics that we have these meetings about, or maybe it's just an open forum. But either way, that's the way that we get people to show up and talk and be taken seriously. That's the most important part, I think, so.
Thank you. Jackie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add, I talked last time about, the need for roundtables and to get in for more information, but when you're dealing with tough issues, is really valuable to have, not at the select board meeting, because that is a business meeting, but to have forums that are identified for folks to come to and to have a discussion about a hot topic. And because then that informs the board and their work, and they get a sense of what the community is thinking and feeling. So I think it's important to separate those two out. And then, of course, that information makes its way back to a select board meeting because you've heard from your community, and it's going to inform any policy development that you may be involved in. But I think it's really important to do that so that you feel comfortable, like, you have that discussion. This is something we're facing. This is something we're thinking about. We want to hear from you. So it's obvious to me, again, as I said at the start of this night, when people, as soon as they have found out I was running, people want to talk, and they have a lot of things to talk about. And they're talking about affordable housing with me. They're talking about issues that are concerning them. And I think they'll talk. So it's creating that opportunity for them that the board can just create the opportunity for the discussion. I think it's important.
Mike.
I'm a meeting junkie. That's why I just go by Mike, I stay anonymous, so. I describe local meetings as live theater. It's most times the only show in town, and nobody follows the script. So I find that exciting. Other people obviously don't. But if you want to have more people, I agree, having roundtable discussions, planned things is important. I think that's happened in the development of the town plan. I think that's a good model to follow. I think it also happens quite frequently in events that are not sponsored by the select board. All of the nonprofits in town are putting on events where lots of wonderful information is, transmitted. I went to the Lincoln Forum at Hildene, and that was a great experience. We have a lot of those things. What we haven't had on the select board is a welcoming attitude to the people who come there. And I would report to you that I have been to a meeting where a person talked about something during public comment and was told by a select board member, maybe you ought to move out of town. Now, that's unacceptable in my book. And I couldn't believe it when I heard it. I also heard a public comment section when there was talk about the former town office building housing project where a woman had complaints about the design of the building, and she was shouted down by the select board,
Mike,
not
that's 2
allowed
minutes.
to make her
I'm
comment.
afraid I'm going to have to cut you off there. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Sean?
So I would answer your question about engagement by saying that I think it involves tying in a lot of the ideas we've heard discussed here tonight and at the last forum. We talked about having a small business group that can get together and share ideas and talk about pain points and talk about successes. They could nominate someone to go back and talk to the select board, maybe quarterly. It ties into the walkability of our town, just being out there and talking to our community members. I don't know that you're going to drive more people on every other Tuesday night in the evening, and I don't know that you have to. There could be comment boxes that people could comment in or ask questions. If we had better technology, they could submit things right through there. So it's tying in a lot of different things rather than saying we've got to drive more people to a specific select board meeting. They are out there, they're available to be seen. GNAT posts them. So if people actually wanted to hear a specific thing from a specific select board meeting, it's out there already. I think the bigger picture answer to your question is just more community involvement through various venues.
So thank you very much, all of the candidates. Much appreciate your time and your patience and your energy for this evening. I threw a whole bunch of questions at you, and then everybody else did as well. Thank you very much to everybody in the audience who showed up and demonstrated an interest in your local town government. And please remember, voting, you can start voting already. You can go to the town office, you can submit your vote. June 2nd is the final day. Make sure you get your voice heard. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to GNAT for making this possible.